Okay.
Warming up.
Yep. Yep, 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 yep. Oh, not this. Tag the Toby.
Facebook and YouTube. YouTube is running. Facebook is running.
Okay, YouTube link. Whew. Okay, you have shared it. Okay, well, we'll give people a few more minutes to join, and then we'll start, regardless. Yeah, busy Monday.
Yeah. Then have the man. Okay, the man one and so far.
Well, he did say he was going to teach us how to play it.
Yeah, just hoping to
It's also in French.
yeah, card contest. Yeah. 56 and 112.
Hey, Karen.
168 credits. Hey, Karen.
How is it?
I think I'm missing a few. Hopefully, they're just under the shelf or something.
Okay.
Yeah, this is done doing it.
Well, I can already tell. Our internet is rated at 8 out of 10, so it's not. There's probably going to be some shakiness in the stream. It already looks a little blurry when we look at the monitor. So
Yeah, and a lot of friends have been complaining of disconnections, not just in the show, but everywhere else.
yeah,
Internet is having a challenge.
maybe we're still on DSL.
Maybe it's everyone watching Snyder Cut. Across the street the other day, I saw fiber cables being dug up in the street.
It has no guarantee that it will help us. And then PLDT is terrified to call me back because every time they call me back to verify my information, I'm like, can you confirm first if we can have available fiber? And then I can be quite snarky on the phone.
Yes.
All right. Hey, you just agreed.
Yes. But you can be snarky on the phone.
But I'm not professional.
Yeah, it's so snarky. Professional snarky.
That's kind of weird.
Let's get started. This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, a little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
This is completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. This episode is about a set of games that we have most likely talked about in other episodes.
We've made reference to some of them because of interesting components, but we're finally going to talk about them officially today. And I think apart from Pandemic Legacy, this sort of wraps up the main franchises that we own that have all been worked on by Matt Leacock. Because we've already done Pandemic, we've already done Thunderbirds, and now we're doing, it's creepy, Forbidden Island, Desert, and Sky. So the Forbidden games are cooperative games published by Gamewright and designed by Matt Leacock. And because it's Gamewright, there was that period of time where they decided everything should come in these darn tin cans, which now in our very humid and harsh country has gotten a little rusty, and it's very painful to open it every time because it's like nails on a chalkboard. But
they were very nice at the start. They were
like, ooh,
fancy, having them on your shelf.
And this was like one of the first games we got in Singapore because again, it was another game that we saw on display at Paradigm. And it's like, oh, this looks interesting. And then it was only after the fact that, oh, it's Matt Leacock and things like that. So Forbidden Island, has us playing the role of explorers, visiting this island and trying to seek out 4 different treasures. And the treasures are thematic to the elements. So there's an earth treasure, a water treasure, an air treasure, and a fire treasure. And you probably can't see it that clearly in the diagram, but the air treasure is a freaking griffin. It's like, what? Or what is that? I don't know. It's a chimerical lion thing. Yeah. It's a lion with wings.
So the game has you using your action points as you cooperatively try to gather the 4 treasures before the island itself sinks. And in many ways, this was one of our first encounters of a game that had a modular board.
Yes.
Because the board consisted of tiles that you laid out on a specific format.
Tiles.
And those tiles then determine the island. Each tile is double-sided, with the other side showing that same location now submerged in water. Because as you play, portions of the map begin to sink into the depths. And if the entire island sinks away, or if the area with the helicopter pad sinks away, then the game ends prematurely.
So for illustration, this is the landing site where we start, and then this is the flooded version of that landing. Same thing with this Dunes of Deception. When it's flooded, apparently sand doesn't really get wet. But that's the basic mechanic of the tiles.
So the game came in a nice insert. You can see every artifact has its own spot. Cards have a
jumping components, but each of the elemental items treasures had a little trophy that came with it.
Yeah, there are different
represent it.
action tokens
Ooh.
because the color you choose then reflects the role you're choosing to use. And then it has its area for cards. Frictionless fingers.
Look at that. Mm.
So players can choose from different roles: the engineer, the messenger, the pilot, the navigator, the explorer, and I'm missing one. The pilot. And from these different roles, you then get a special power which is specific to your role. The engineer, for example, can shore up sinking sails much better. The messenger is able to share cards around the area faster. The pilot can fly to any location in the island once per turn. So you could see the familiar markings that are present in Pandemic, wherein each role has a specific role or specific power they can use.
And you must all like do 4 things, but in this case,
3. 3 actions.
no, I mean like there are 4 treasures
To
in
collect.
the same way that there are 4 diseases in Pandemic.
Mhm.
So there was like, hey, that feels familiar.
And then in a similar way, you have the player cards, which compose of the cards for the treasures, because you need a certain number of them to get the treasure. Or, rather than Epidemic, the Waters Rise card. Whenever the Waters Rise card is drawn, then the Waters Rise, which means one of the areas in the island will be sinking. Where is the card?
The tiles.
Now shuffle the flood discard pile and place it on top of the flood discard deck to discard the card to draw. So yeah, here. Dummy. It's in front of me. So yeah, so here you have the different locations. Some locations identify if it's the starting location for the player, such as this one, the Broadscape. But whenever the waters rise, one of these cards is drawn, and that island then has to be flipped down. If it's already in its blue side, it is removed from the game forever.
And that leads to problems. And you know, the waters rise is sort of like an epidemic card, because then you'll draw more tiles will get flooded every turn, and we mark that with a little
That's the thing that fell earlier.
the little arrow. So so like, oh no, it's 4 cards, and then oh no, it's still 4, and then oh no, it's 5. Similar to Pandemic, so then there's a lot of end game states, so that if the floodwaters get all the way to the skull mark at the top, and it's not super clear, but there you go, then the game will end. And then of course, if the tile with the helicopter is lost, then it's game over. And if you lose access to all the temples, because to find the different treasures, you'd have to find the matching temples. So for example,
And give 4 cards.
this Howling Garden is where the air lion is, and then the Temple of the Sun is where the little earth thing is. So depending on it, you would if you lose access to those locations before you acquire the artifact, then you're gonna lose the game. Which is sort of like if a particular disease like overwhelms you.
Yes.
So it was definitely an interesting spread of things, and initially it felt like I used to joke like, what is this, Pandemic light? You know, because it felt like it had a lot of familiar elements. It was a much kid-friendlier packaging and all these things, but it certainly provided challenge on its own, and the game has won multiple awards, including a Mensa Select Award. So it really became a popular thing. And it's funny how, starting with this one, it had a little subtitle caption, which is "Adventure ... if you dare," which wasn't very creative. But in the subsequent games, the matching subtitle got a lot better. So Forbidden Island is still a great challenge. And then unlike Pandemic, where when you run out of cure cards, the game ends. So that's an end game state. In Forbidden Island, it introduced the interesting mechanic that no, if you need to draw more of the cards and there are none, you shuffle all the discards, including the flood cards, and then you start again. So it means you can have more epidemics, quote unquote, happening to you over and over and over again. And it provides a different sort of feel of challenge. And then there's the whole modular board thing, which was genius to do tiles, because then your game is different every time you play, and navigating the island itself is a unique challenge because as the island tiles disappear, then your paths around the place super change. So it's definitely a game that we've enjoyed, and it's in that nice flavor of pandemic. But admittedly, it still feels very close to pandemic of all the forbidden games.
It doesn't quite have any expansions, but online you will find different map configurations that have been approved for play. So it's interesting how these maps can change the way you look at the game when you play it. With Forbidden Island, the rush is to get to the helipad, and the helipad is where the helicopter is waiting, but only if you have the 4 artifacts.
Yeah, that helicopter pilot will not take you out of there unless you have all 4.
Now, interestingly, as you leave the Forbidden Island on that helicopter, you find yourself moving to the next game in the line.
Forbidden Desert.
Forbidden Desert starts and opens with you and a group of others crashing into the desert as your helicopter crashes into a ruin in the desert floor.
Coincidence? I think not. This is also one of our rustier tins. Wait, give me a moment. No, I don't want it.
Very rusted.
Ooh, so painful.
Subtitled Thirst for Survival.
See, that was a more clever subtitle than Adventure If You Dare.
The challenge has you and the other adventurers excavate an ancient desert city to try to recover the legendary flying machine that is rumored to be powered by the sun. But then a vast desert storm relentlessly pounds on you. Possibly risking getting buried in the sand, you must hurry to excavate and dig to find the parts and build the airship.
So like Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert also relies on tiles. And your starting tile is this crashed helicopter. It doesn't explicitly state that this is the same adventure as from Forbidden Island, but you do the math. Where else are these people, crashing? And it's kind of a sad story when you think about it, because that means that they acquire the treasure and then they escape and then they crash in the desert. And so now it's like, are your treasures really valuable?
They're lost somewhere in the desert because you now focus on building the machine.
So the basic mechanic, though, is that every tile is reversible now, but not for flooding, but to reveal sort of aspects of a hidden civilization that seems to have been in this part of the desert. And that is one of the actions of the game, where in the previous game, you could shore up tiles to kind of reduce the floodwaters. In this case, one of your actions is to excavate. And when you excavate, if there is no sand on the tile, you flip it over and you'll get whatever bonus or information is on the tile.
The game now can actually have up to 5 players, and true to the tradition of having a meter that shows how bad things are getting, this one has a meter that shows how many cards are drawn as the storm gets worse. At the lower levels, you could see you could start with just 2 each time the card is triggered, but it can go as high as 6, which can spoil Doom. Because whenever cards are drawn, sand must be added to the modular map. And if you run out of sand tokens, the game ends.
So you'll cover a tile with a sand token like this. And if you need to put more than 1 sand token, you do it with the darker side and the X, which means people can't pass. So even no matter how many you put, is that it will just be the dark side. And that's a pain because you cannot excavate a tile if it still has sand on it.
So like earlier, the box still nicely contains everything. You can see the airship, the parts, you can see an area for the cards and tokens.
It's very well thought out.
It gets beat up real fast because of the metal stuff, and you get cards that are stuck like this one right now.
Although it has like the little notch and the thing to help you get it out, it's not perfect.
Cards come in multiple types. You have, of course, your player cards, just like the earlier ones, which show the different rules.
But they also show a water canteen because, are you feeling thirsty? And depending on the player, you have a different capacity of water. And if any one of you runs out of water, the game is over.
But then there are now a new set of cards called gear cards, which are found when certain tiles are found. They can reveal special powers that you can use to help twist
gear icon
events in your favor. Finally, you have the desert cards, which come in two types. The first, it shows where the storm moves, and depending on the arrow and the cube, you move the map in that manner, with every part of the map that moves gaining sand, representing the passage of the storm.
So the way the tiles work is that they deliberately don't have enough tiles to have a complete mosaic of 30. There's going to be an empty space, and that represents the eye of the storm moving around. And following the cards, you will move tiles around the eye to represent the shifting sands. And it's just also representing you getting lost in the desert. So the location doesn't technically change. You're just getting lost.
The other cards include Storm Picks Up, which means the meter rises and the number of cards drawn increases. But then there's a new one, which is Sun Beats Down. And whenever Sun Beats Down is drawn, everyone who is exposed to the sun, meaning those who are not in tunnels or those who are not in the shade of a dome, will have to lose water, which makes your lives worse.
Now, like any good desert, there is the possibility of water as represented by these little trees, and it's possibly an oasis. If you are able to excavate such a tile, you may reveal a well, and everyone who is present on the tile will get 2 units of water only when it is revealed. If you have the water bearer, he can continue to take water from the well to help everybody. But otherwise, if you don't have a water bearer, this is a one-time bonus. So be careful. But because it is the desert, you may get another well, or you may get a mirage, which is just dry earth. So there are only 3 of these tiles that potentially contain water, but yes, you just have to deal with the fact that 1 out of 3 is a mirage.
Now, with the tiles forming a 5x5 grid, you might wonder, how does the game work in finding the treasures? You then have tiles which, when excavated, show symbols like this. And then there's a matching tile that shows a symbol like this. These are the type of tiles that you look for in the game, because where those points intersect, in this case here, would be where the treasure is lying. So even as the map changes and as pieces move around, that intersection point is what you pay attention to, because that's where the treasure has been uncovered. And it's interesting how this game makes finding treasure so interestingly immersive, because you really feel like you're digging and you're searching and you're trying to hunt it down. And once it's revealed, you don't pay attention to the arrows anymore, because you see the treasure on that tile, but you have to find a way to get there, clear the sand, and only once the sand is clear can you pick up the treasure.
And then if you're lucky, you'll eventually find the secret landing pad, which will suddenly spawn the base of the airship. And this airship, I will show you, and I think we showed it to you in interesting components, but once you have all the pieces of the airship, so, oh, I got it.
Yeah.
So engine, sundial, energy source, and then the little propeller. We're going to fly away on an ancient machine.
Mind you, you must all be at the home tile in order to escape with that machine. So no, this is not one of those games wherein if at least most of you are done, can we like sacrifice one person and leave? No.
The other quirky thing is that there are tunnels, and tunnel tiles, when they are revealed, if you have any 2 tunnel tiles revealed, you can now travel instantaneously as long as it is not blocked by sand, which is actually the difficulty because the sand is everywhere. So that's Forbidden Desert. And admittedly, we were playing Forbidden Desert wrong the first few times we were playing it, because we forgot about the rule about the sun. So in terms of the desert, the tunnels protecting you from sun beats down. So we were dying nonstop, and it wasn't until we remembered that we finally started winning this game. It is definitely harder than Forbidden Island, but admittedly, a more fulfilling experience, in my opinion. And then the ability to support 5 players is a gem in any game, especially a cooperative game. So we super love Forbidden Desert. Probably a bit more than Island, but then Island has a nicer balance of variable play that doesn't feel as stressful compared to Desert. Because Desert means that you will have both Storm Picks Up and Sun Beats Down cards cycling infinitely, making things all the more difficult for you.
And Desert has the bigger chance of a player dying.
Yes,
whereas Island,
and stuff.
Unless there's really no choice, you're still able to swim off to the next tile.
More or less,
the tile
yeah.
you're on sinks. So, having escaped on the helicopter crashes, but then you build this legendary airship to escape, and that leads us to our next game.
When Gamewright gave up on tins, Forbidden Sky. It's a box. It's a glorious, simple box. Thank you, Gamewright. And this is like becoming like the standard square size. Like I see so many boxes of similar dimensions. So Forbidden Sky, thankfully, maintains the ability to support up to 5 players. It is still a cooperative game of survival. And once again, I'll have to figure out where the starting
what's its subtitle?
Height of Danger. Ooh, good puns. And you'll notice the starting tile of this game has you landing in a mysterious airship. So now you find this weird city in the sky, and with this, we face a new challenge of trying to escape. And the escape plan now is a rocket ship.
So the game is still an action point cooperative game where you and the other players must work together in order to, not collect 4 things, but actually build a circuit based on the blueprint that you are working on. The blueprint is, of course, dependent on the difficulty level you choose to play with, because the number of elements that must be present in the circuit is dictated by the card. And if you're wondering why I'm using the word circuit, it's because it literally has you build one.
So if you notice, like one of the components, a lot of them all will have nice conductive surfaces on them.
So you have these pylons, which if you look at it, has these metallic parts as well.
And then you have little discs like this that are all just the reflective material, the conductive materials.
And finally, representing ropes and cables that you are placing around the area, you have these, which are actually metallic on the other side. And for the reason behind that is because they allow you to build your circuit. There's a small magnet that allows them to hold in place. It's not strong enough to keep things together, but as you build those interconnecting parts, you're literally building a circuit that moves from one side to the other.
So from a scientific setting, there are 2 of the legs of the rocket ship have the same leads. So this is your power source. And then once the circuit is complete, it will trigger the rocket.
So yes, building a smaller circuit does happen. Does happen in the sense that there's nothing physically stopping you from doing so, but that is not how you can win in this game. You must build according to the blueprint you have. And part of the trouble in this game is whereas the first 2 games had the map already present and you found yourself navigating through this modular map, in Forbidden Sky, you build the map as you play. You can bring up the tiles.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at the beauty thing. But here.
Part of your actions is to survey the locations, and you find yourself drawing tiles such as these, which represent portions of this air base that you are uncovering. And then, by playing them together, you can then build the growing landscape. You will notice the purple areas, and those purple areas represent
the sky.
The sky. Because this game pays attention to those holes you create. Because wind might blow you off.
And you'll notice that there are half circles and quarter circles, and if you put them together, things can happen to support this.
So looking at this one as the starting tile, We have the starting place, which is the airship, and we have the rest of the map here. When you get your land tile, you now have to decide how it connects in reference to everything else there. So for example, this would be a legal connection.
Oof,
And
that's also a dangerous place.
It has you expanding the movable area. As you more tiles, you then determine, do I put it here or do I move it up here? I can't place it here because it's a gap, it's a hole right now. And that planning is vital in creating a landscape that allows you to build your circuit.
Like this symbol, this lightning bolt represents that you can put the pylon. So then if you put the pylon, then it's here, but then you have to make sure that the next location, oops, my hand is covering it. If the next location is too far for one of these darn little wire things. So there is quite the engineering challenge to build the circuit. And you'll notice, like, in a novice game, it is the launch pad base, one big circle, 3 small circles, and 3 pylons. But then, as you get to even just elite, it's like, oh my god, so many pieces. So you're going to have the right number of components and a complete circuit.
Mitch asks, what's your win rate for each game? We'll get to that once we're done with this one. Mitch also asks, can you demo the spaceship and pylons? Probably the pylons, but not the spaceship. We'll leave that for people who complete the game.
That is a reveal, although I have an IG story from like 2 years ago or something.
Now, the elements on the map they're building have more than just an interesting visual, because they are affected by gameplay. You will notice on this side, there is this little spinning area with an arrow. This represents the direction the wind is blowing. And if the wind blows in a direction that kicks you off into a purple area, unless you have rope, you fall off and die.
Doink, doink, doink.
And that ends the game.
So now the player cards have a rope part instead of just
the life meter.
A life meter, and it's not instead of the water meter actually. And the rope represents that every time you fall off, you're able to come back, and that's a tricky part of the game.
In addition, the orange lines, which are, if you'll notice, where the pylons are also a threat you must keep your eyes on, because there are cards when drawn, lightning strikes. And what does that mean? Anyone who's standing on a tile space that has the orange line means they get struck by the electricity coursing down the cables. So moving around is more than just moving around. It's a question of taking risks into account. It's a question of noting where the wind is blowing. Because if you are far enough away, for example, you're here, and the wind is blowing towards, let's say, the opposite direction. But then the wind blows you 3 steps. So from here, you go 1, 2,
5.
You lose some level of rope. But then if the wind only blows you 1 step, then it's 1 and you are safe.
So the sort of weather deck here is just all painful things, because then it's like lightning strikes and wind changes in a clockwise direction, or the storm intensifies, which means, you know, more cards to draw next turn. And there's a storm intensifies that forces a shuffle midway through the deck. And then, of course, the one that we dread the most is high winds, which is when the wind will blow in a particular direction. And depending on how many high wind cards you draw, things can get pretty bad. So this is definitely so far, it's like, it definitely feels like a peak evolution of the whole Forbidden game line. I totally respect what it does, but at the same time, it's definitely one of the hardest. It's, I mean, like the engineering challenge involved. No, just lay it flat. It's okay.
I was trying to see if there's a way I can make it more visible for people to see.
Yeah, it's super slippery.
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit of an angle. So let's assume we have that area and that area.
And the tile laying is not like full-on Carcassonne. Like, you don't have it. It just has to be a legal connection to the tile that you are connecting. But then it doesn't have to connect to all other tiles beside it. right? Or
Yeah.
there's I forget if there's
The orange. You have to maintain.
You have to maintain the circuit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this case, we have enough to have that area and these pylons. So you'll notice this one, for example, too close. And yes, there are different lengths.
There's like a short one and a long one.
So this short one, in theory, yep,
just
can
enough.
Connect there. The long one,
No.
it's too far. It can't connect there. But this one is enough to reach there.
Just barely.
Yes. There, and you can see the connection has started to form. And you want them eventually to connect to this one, but yes, you have to find the tiles that allow you to place this one.
And that's a pain because that requires, this giant arc piece that, let me find at least one more so that I can, yeah. So then it's starting to like, hey, come together.
The magnets are strong enough that it's picking up stuff. See?
So then it starts to build, right? So definitely a challenge.
Mitch asks, Carlo asks, do people shout the wind is changing? No, people just curse. Ah!
To be fair, there are like little things that can save you along the way. Like, oops, some tiles like this one have a little cage on it, which represents it's a Faraday cage,
and that protects
which
you
protects
when
you
lightning
from
strikes.
lightning. Yeah, and then but then in terms of the wind, there's no protecting you from the wind. It's at the most you hope you're bracing against something else.
Either you're safe enough that you'll be blown to safety, or you're actually you have enough rope.
There is this one, diba? Wasn't this the, what was that symbol? We haven't played this as much as the others, obviously. It's the teleporter where you can. There is also a wind shelter. Sorry, that's what I was looking for.
So there you see winds change, and then storm intensifies, lightning strikes.
It's a deck of bad things.
And then high winds. So high winds is when you have to see if anyone falls off.
There are not a lot of wind shelters. Where is it?
Mitch asks, nice to be summarize the reaction. Dagdag mo pa ng no. Yes.
Oh, there. The wind shelter is this blue glowing ball.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're there, you won't get blown around by the wind.
So, Forbidden Sky definitely escalates the difficulty of the first two. If you wanted to play with, let's say, younger siblings, or you wanted to get someone who's never tried board games before to play, Island is a good place to start because it is magnificently easy to teach. The concepts are not too confusing, and the visuals are very clear.
Yes.
You see the islands. The island's okay, you see the islands submerge, and you see when they're gone.
The visuals are so clear, in fact, that it's recently that I noticed that, they had Forbidden Island out in Big Bang Theory more than once.
Forbidden Desert, on the other hand, is a perfect mix of complexity and clarity. We only had one rule wrong, which was the fact that the powers last until the next day, until your next turn.
And that the tunnels protect you from the sun.
And that was, for us, an idiotic thing of not noticing it because the symbols were there. We didn't pay attention to it.
Yes.
So we were playing very gung-ho in the past where powers only lasted that moment and not the entire round.
I swear, we went for about 10 games. We were like, how are we not getting this? And to be fair,
we were always like one or two moves away
from winning. So it's crazy.
But then Forbidden Sky is the game you want to get if you want to impress others. Visually, it is beautiful. It is fantastic. And if you succeed, that moment is worth experiencing. And that's why we don't want to spoil it. The game visually just looks awesome. Here is the back cover. It shows a sample game in progress. Look at that. Look at those wires spread all over. Look at those people wondering where to go. And one of the things I love the most about Forbidden Sky is even if you could build the circuit beforehand, you have to make sure you're all on the pad the moment you do so. So you can't build it and then rush to the pad. You have to make sure the last cable you connect is at the point you're at the pad. Because the moment you connect it, it's too late to rush for the rocket and the game ends.
So, Forbidden Island, it looks like we have we win almost all the time. That definitely the easier game. Forbidden Desert, I know our stats are not going to look great, and I didn't track all, but how do I read this?
Okay, while you're checking, Mitch also shares Gaming Library had a giant Forbidden Island as one of its events. Yes, there were even some groups that the Forbidden Island tiles, they printed them as something like 2 by 2 feet. So they had a huge map on the football field, and they were playing as actual people jumping around, and it was just amazing to watch. Sweet spot for each game.
For Forbidden Desert, because to be fair, we were playing the game like in the time before I was tracking wins. We only have one tracked win out of like 8. So I don't know.
So I think Forbidden Island works regardless of 2 to 4 players. It works no matter what. Desert feels deadlier once you have 4 players. Having it at 3 seems to be the sweet spot. 4 and 5 feels punishing. You have the advantage, however, at that number of being able to spread out and search more things faster. But what feels painful with Forbidden Desert at 4 and 5 players is the fear of water loss, because it's so long before your turn comes back.
Yes, and then as the sun keeps beating down.
Yes, and as you're rushing to get to the well, or at least what you think is the well, the cards might cycle back even before you get your turn. Forbidden Sky, I felt works easiest with 2, because you can really coordinate how you'll move and work with the wind.
Yeah.
At more than 2,
the difficulty definitely scales.
You're again at the mercy of, in Rocky's turn, the wind shifted in direction. And then in the player before Rocky, I'm blown out of where I wanted to go. And now my turn comes in. Wala na. Iba na move ko. And that tends to be a painful, tragic truth as far as Forbidden Sky is
concerned. So it made such a big difference, because in Forbidden Desert, it was the desert tiles that were moving around. But generally, like, the place you were was the place you were, and it's not so bad. Sky pushes you around a lot. The wind aspect is crazy, and but surprisingly, we have tracked at least 2 wins on this game, so that's not bad.
And then we're of course already anxious to see what will be next. It's probably going to be Forbidden Planet or Forbidden Space.
Because it's a rocket ship. It's going somewhere.
We've left the planet with this one, so we're probably gonna crash in some weird planet, or we don't crash. We're stuck in space, and then there's now possible habitable planets within the system.
Forbidden return.
But then you have to spend fuel to visit each one and see if it's safe. I don't know. Well, we can't wait to see what will come out, but it's definitely something exciting.
But if the Forbidden Line ends here, it's not a bad ending.
Forbidden Dimension, Carl shares.
Carlo shares that he remembers we won a Forbidden Desert game together, but he also remembers that we were very surprised that we won. Yes, and that, as experienced as we are as players, Forbidden Desert is such a good challenge. And me being a big Dune fan, I super love playing Forbidden Desert. You really get that feeling of that you're out there and the desert is out to kill you. So yeah, perfect for Dune fans.
So what else? What else do we say about the series? I'm very excited to see what innovation they'll come up with. Island was the modular board that has parts disappearing, and that was
revelatory.
I haven't seen that used in other games.
At least to this effect, yeah.
Desert was insane the way it combined the storm system with the sand mechanic, and surprisingly, as unfair as it feels, it never feels impossible.
Yeah, it's technically winnable.
It just really feels, oh my God, we're dying because of the desert. And then Sky was such a delight when we realized, oh my God, that's what this is. And as we were
Yeah, it was
playing,
really, we're building a
and
circuit.
as we were about to place that last piece, we were like already, oh my God, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? We actually stopped to pull out our phones and prepare to record it
Yes.
before we activated the ending. And then just before we were about to activate, wait, are we legal? Can we do this?
Oh,
Are we all there?
Because there were some cables that were like at the very limits of their ability.
Did we complete everything that's required? So yeah, if there is a forbidden dimensions or a forbidden planet or a forbidden galaxy, um, I'm excited to see what system they'll use this time. Maybe it'll be AR.
And it's kind of crazy that as much as I like sometimes joke about the Matt Leacock system, like we have all these games by Matt Leacock that fundamentally are pandemic over and over again. But he really managed to innovate with these three games, and each one felt very different. And like when we reviewed Thunderbirds, even that game felt very different.
Yes.
Although I can recognize the fundamentals of pandemic that were still in the game. Mitch is like, it's one of those games you are against the game talaga. Yes, I mean like as in terms of true cooperative games, Matt Leacock can't go wrong.
And
He's great at this.
And I'm very impressed how the way he has designed the math, the underlying math behind the games. When the game fights against you, it never feels random.
Yes.
It actually feels like it's intelligently fighting you. And I know it's really just chance and, you know, us building the story as we play. But I guess the choices he made as to how the game hits back nicely makes sense and really captures those moments of you just needed one more step or you just needed one more cube.
And I think we felt this the most with Forbidden Desert. Because in Desert, your storm deck, you cycle through the whole deck. Then you learn how many storm picks up there are and how many sun beats down. And you kind of start to work with that ebb and flow rhythm of okay, we've had all the sun beats down for this
we have
cycle
2 rounds,
of the deck.
2 rounds, 3, 2 rounds, 3,
So
run.
And then
And I liked how Desert really had the teamwork.
Mm.
Wherein I'm the explorer, I can bring you with me as I cross the area. Or okay, jetpack, I can bring one more person with me and we can jetpack. And
the archaeologist, I'm just gonna dig because I
I'll pass you this object.
Yeah.
Or the water bearer flinging water to everyone and then
I
grabbing
love
more
the
water.
power of the water bearer because he can really spit water one tile adjacent. So it's like here's some water and here's some water.
And the idea of getting buried in sand was just such a delight to hate that moment, because when there's too much sand, you can't do anything but dig your way out. But at the same time, it really feels so appropriate that you're struggling to dig your way out.
But it's like, and it's nice though that it's not player elimination. Getting buried by sand is not an end state. You just are limited to one action, which is digging.
Unless you are lucky enough to have a device, sand blast blower, it's all gone and stuff like that.
Dune blast.
Dune blaster.
Final jetpack to fly to the ship in Forbidden Desert. Yes, more often than not, it's like
we
tried to hold the jetpack for that, but it's,
which is similar to Forbidden Island when you save that helicopter
the airlift.
moment.
Yeah. So, and it's funny how I feel like because Island you still felt that there were like some power stuff, and then Desert codified them as gear, and then Sky still used gear again. But then you have two tracks that you have a life track based on how many times you get shot, and the rope track, how many times you fall off the edge.
I will state though that Sky has the artwork I do not like among all of the three. Whereas Island and Desert were very elegant in their decisions and in their color choices and the palette. Sky kind of gets so crazy that the board does not look pretty. Yes. And I feel that was a lost opportunity there.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's with these turquoise and gray with purple clouds and orange circuit lines?
And if you look at that, realize what they're trying to illustrate is this.
Yeah.
So you're kind of thinking, I don't see it. I see how this is the location that this is representing. So it was kind of a lost opportunity there. For
It
me.
feels too close to the circuit diagram, I guess, and
Mhm.
not so much as the setting, the fantasy setting.
And then even functionally, it doesn't look pretty because there
Yeah.
are portions that are just really bad angles, and I just feel it could have been done better.
So yeah, obviously, I mean, the way you listen to us ramble about the game is that Desert's definitely the one that like, um, it's our happy balance of
Mhm.
everything. It's a great challenge. We don't win a lot, but we still enjoy playing it. Sky is novelty. It's like if we can arrange it and get the rocket launched,
Mhm.
it is a social media moment. It's like it's the best, guys. It's the best. And then Island is like just good fun. It's like good family fun, good degree of challenge, and then we can always bring it out to
Mhm.
play with different people.
Good to introduce the new gamers. And so that is the Forbidden Line. Are there any last few questions?
Do we
Any-
have strategies for this? I don't know if we can have strategies for this.
I think it's always pay attention to everyone else's moves. Standard in any map Leacock game is that you have to really maximize every turn. And sadly, that has led to many game sessions having the alpha player who tells everyone what to do because
That's
they
not
know
fun.
the best thing to do. Um, but I think if as long as you're all there to enjoy, to see if you can win or lose, then it should stay fun. But if you're playing with someone who only cares about winning, then know
Mm.
that that's the name of the game, and that might affect how you'll enjoy the game.
Yeah. And then depending on the game, it's also just like Pandemic, paying attention to your lose conditions. So Forbidden Desert, I feel you're most likely to lose the game because you run out of sand tiles. And when you run out of sand tiles, the game is over. So it's like when you're running out of cubes in Pandemic.
Yes.
In Forbidden Sky, admittedly, there are too many variables. It's like
Mhm.
the wind, the lightning, maintaining the circuit, the wires, the oh my god.
The
There's so
joy
much.
the joy of Sky is realizing that there are things you can build at the end. So planning how to make sure you move and you make sure you're all protected from the lightning and from the because the cables that you connect still conduct electricity.
Yeah, it brings the danger to you. Lightning shocks everyone and everyone connected to the circuit. So
Yeah.
that's painful.
And then the teleport pads are always very useful. So try to decide when you're building the terrain that you position things where they will be most needed later on. And that includes an escape route.
Yeah. So and Sky and I mean well, all of them the one that you have to get to an ending tile to end the game. The helicopter, the flying machine, and in this case the launch pad. But just keep careful tabs on that because it's easy to lose track. I think Sky is the one that's like I think there was a game we almost made the wrong circuit. Like it just couldn't it wasn't creating the complete
It
arc.
couldn't cross back.
Yeah, yeah.
Because since the ship tile has the positive and negative portion, as you can see here at the bottom, down there. We had it at one point wherein the circuit seemed to continue, but then could not reconnect there. It can only go back to the other side.
Yeah,
And
just like no,
it's not gonna work. We have to build around, build around.
So we had to build more pieces, and that means finding more tiles, and that's a challenge. That is a challenge. Oh my god.
Oh yeah. So I guess that's it.
I'm trying to find my where's my video of the end, which I'm not gonna play it, but I really just want to find it. I'll just find it for after. But yeah, it's so good though. That moment it was worth. It's like one of our best moments in gaming.
Mm.
Like, and that's why it came up as like for a great novel component. Sky, the ending to Sky is like, yay electronics. Okay, building this circuit had some value.
So yeah, that is the Forbidden Game series by Game Right Games.
And Matt Leacock.
We remain anxious for the fourth game, which may or may not come, but we would love to see it if it does, and we will definitely play the heck out of it. But this is all the time we have for this episode. We had a lot of fun, and we hope you'll join us again next time.
If you have questions or suggestions for future episodes, fill up the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. this was our thing. We decided to do escapist games, considering our special situation in NCR Plus this week.
Since it's been since we're expecting another year of the previous year, we thought it best to at least open this week with all about escaping, no matter what.
Escaping on flying machines. All right. Then you can follow us on Twitter, Altoby No Shade, RG Sunico.
You can also check out our blog, baduypride.com, for all the previous episodes and stuff about us. And wait, this week we have a lot of exciting things coming up.
Yeah, we already posted the schedule. Should I share it?
Yeah, sure.
I will just have to find it.
I just feel that we have to make sure we plug Friday.
Yeah.
As mentioned, we were looking at making sure this year we have more guests. And this week is another week where we will have guests. But for this week, we have the following things planned out. For Tuesday, we are talking about feeling trapped. Because yes, that is the theme of
That's
this
our
week.
quarantine feeling.
And we will be very happy to have any of you join us as we discuss about how we have moments in life where we feel trapped and the many things we've done to circumvent.
Thursday, we're going to do a fan request. We're going to talk about Battlestar Galactica. Karen asked us to talk about it. Friday is a special day. So we're having over the Divine Divas who host a regular web show called Divine Bar. So that's Precious Paul and Nicole, Brigading, and Venus Deluxe. So we've had Precious on the show before, but it'll be the first time for Brigading and Venus. So that should be an interesting night. And I'm already going to tell you that the following Friday, which, yes, I know it's Good Friday, we also have guests mapped out for that particular day.
Yes.
And then lastly, we're going to do a quarantine check-in episode on Sunday, just keeping it chill and just like checking on everyone, especially, you fellow citizens of the NCR Plus bubble, if you want to call it. Although sometimes you worry it's foam. But so that's what we're going to be doing on Sunday. I have hiccups. But that's the shape of the episodes this week. So we're looking forward to having you all join us the next few nights. And then, of course, feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below about what do you think about the Forbidden Games? What's your favorite winning moment? Or do you still celebrate defeat? Let us know in the comments. And be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And this is Baduy Pride.